Good morning, everyone. Will DuPree here at KXAN in Austin, Texas, and please welcome to our Japan 2020 live stream, talking about the Olympics amidst a lot of issues with the COVID-19 pandemic. Joining me today is my co-host, Erin Cargile here. Erin, a lot to discuss today, and first I want you to explain to people kind of why we're doing this, because some people may question at this moment, why talk about the Olympics amidst everything else?
Yeah, well, obviously a lot more timely things to be talking about as far as slowing down the risk and the spread of COVID-19 in our own communities. But a little background for you guys at home. Here at KXAN, our company is owned by Nexstar. We call it the Nexstar Nation, and we are committed to covering the Olympics for you. And that includes, the lead up to those games, potentially starting on July 24th. And so in the weeks and months leading up to today, we always had planned on launching this Tokyo, Japan, a live digital show the first week of March. If you joined us last week, we were live in Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center where the coronavirus and COVID-19 were impacting our access to athletes. We had planned on going into that facility and interviewing them, getting video of their training, and all of that. It came to a screeching halt literally the day before we were going to go to that facility. And so we were still able to go, but access was denied to those athletes. Some of them decided on their own to meet us outside the facility. We were able to talk to them about the timely issue of the coronavirus, how it was impacting them mentally, also their training, and things have just really picked up ever since that moment. And so we had a talk as a team and said, do we continue moving forward with this show? As of this point right now, the Olympics are still on. Will is going to get to some details about what the IOC is saying about that right now, but it's so far out that they have not made a call about the Olympics. So we still feel like if we're committed to the Olympics and bringing you coverage, we want to tell you exactly what's happening right now and still tell the athletes' stories. What does their daily life look like right now with this new element?
Yeah, because they are impacted just as much as we are, and everybody at home who's watching at the moment too. What I will say is that the Olympics at the moment is kind of the outlier at this point, because pretty much every other major sporting event here in the U.S. at least has been canceled or postponed at this point. The Olympics, though, is still on at the moment.
Yeah, and also in talking to some of these athletes and following their social media accounts, many of them are still in college. Some of them, have maybe put their studies on hold, but they're still tied to universities. And so some of them were affected by the NCAA saying, no more competitions. So some of them, maybe they're in their junior or senior years, they are getting that stripped away from them. And then they're also looking on to the Olympics, and they're an Olympic hopeful. And now they're saying, am I going to get hit twice by this and affected in two different ways? We're going to hear from athletes who are training at university facilities. They were, and now things have been, there's this upheaval in their life as they try to find a new way to train, because as we've mentioned already, the Olympics are still on. And Will, you've been looking up the very latest with what those organizers of the Olympics continue saying even up until today.
Yeah, at the moment we have a statement from the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. If you just take a look at this statement, this is their latest from March 13th. Again, that was on Friday. The U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee has put out daily updates about how different procedures the athletes and the organizations are approaching this at the moment. However, this is the most complete statement. As you see, things are continuing for them. So as you see on this screen here, it says, despite the ever-changing nature of coronavirus, its global impact, the U.S. OPC has not been given any information to suggest that the Tokyo 2020 Games will not go ahead as scheduled and as planned. So once again, it appears the Olympics are going on just as normal and will happen in July as planned.
Yeah, and we'll see, because even with the postponement and the cancellation of sports on a large scale, any gathering at this point, even businesses being affected, everything, and even schools in our area, and I'm sure in the areas where you live too, outside of Texas, things have been postponed and canceled really through March and April, maybe some events in May, but you've got to remember the Olympics are toward the end of July. The start date's not until July 24th, and so as we're going to get into to a little bit later. The trials were really starting to kick off, especially this week. You've seen some postponements with trials, but only through March and April, kind of TBD situation as you get on past that point. So nobody knows what this thing is going to look like, how much longer we're all going to be in this situation. And so really just making some temporary changes in the interim. So really this month and next, and then we'll see what happens.
And as we just shared that statement from the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, we want to provide some context about the kind of global situation that the COVID-19 scare has really created. And if you take a look at these numbers, these are the latest numbers as of this morning from the World Health Organization. So as you see at the top of your screen, these are the confirmed coronavirus cases worldwide. 173,344 cases across the globe, more than 7,000 deaths, and 152 countries, areas, or territories that are impacted by this. We also wanted to look up the numbers for the U.S. So if you take a look at this screen, this is coming from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And this is what the CDC says the latest numbers are. More than 3,400 confirmed cases across the country, 68 deaths, and this is also in 53 states and American territories. So really a big global impact, one here in the U.S. as well, Erin.
Yeah, we have to remember the Olympics is not just the U.S. I mean, there are dozens and dozens of countries coming together, everyone trying to contain the virus in their own community and they're really their own countries right now. And so, you know, what do you introduce into the mix once you bring everyone to one location from different countries in different situations? Obviously, travel is severely impacted right now. Even athletes trying to travel to places for their trials and that kind of thing, they can't get there. And so everyone trying to just kind of hunker down and stay in their own space. And so, yeah, the international part of the Olympics is also a big aspect to this, and everyone coming together. And how do we all stay healthy, both fans, spectators, volunteers? I mean, there are thousands and thousands of people who are potentially going to descend on Tokyo.
For sure, and every moment it seems things are changing, so we could have different news to share very, very soon. But at the moment, as we said, the Olympics are still set to proceed in July in Tokyo. We have a third voice that we want to bring into our conversation this morning, and he's been kind enough to stand by for us as Erin and I have been talking. But I want to introduce you all to somebody. Erin, if you don't mind doing the honors for us.
Yeah, sure. So for those of you who want to know a little bit more about our Next Star team, there's really 7 of us who work for different Next Star stations across the country. Jack Doles, is out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, Wood TV, and Jack did the honors of bringing us our Journey to Tokyo story this week, which we kind of scrapped the plan, which was to do another story about an athlete and tell you their story and what led them to this point. We said, you know what, coronavirus is the most important thing to focus on right now. What's going through these athletes' minds? What is the IOC saying at this point? And so, Jack, you jumped right in and said, I want to tackle this story. And so what can you tell us about it and what you learned?
Well, first I want to tell you, Erin, we were supposed to be doing this segment today from LA, where they were going to host the Olympic Summit. They bring in over 100 athletes from across the country, and it's an opportunity for them to share their story and their mission and, you know, all their dreams and goals. And so that's a great opportunity for U.S. athletes to do that, but they had to scrap that for obvious reasons. So now, our opportunity was last week. And of course, we had to go to Plan B when they shut down the Olympic training facility. And so we got some of those, you said, some of those athletes, we talked to them outside of the Olympic training facility. And there's some great challenges going on now. You know, one of the big things these athletes are trained to do is peak at just the right time. And, swimmers peak in time for that NCAA tournament, in time for the Olympic trials. Now, when are you peaking for? So they still have to go ahead as planned, but they have to be ready to change on the fly. The Olympic boxers we talked to in this story, it was Tiger Johnson, Joe Hicks, and Keyshawn Davis. They've all made the U.S. team, but they still have to qualify for the Olympics. And so they were supposed to head to Argentina now for the Tournament of Americas, where they were going to compete, where I think it was the top 5 got in. And then if they didn't make it there, then they would go to Paris in May for a last chance qualifier. Well, now the timeline is unknown. So they've got to still train, And, how do you stay safe when you're training in a contact sport? That's a big thing that they're going to have to deal with. Where are they going to train? When we talked to no, it's actually Keyshawn. So he's in Norfolk, and he said he was basically told, don't come back there because it was just too dangerous for him to train there. So now he's trying to find the right spot to train should they close the U.S. Olympic Training Facility altogether. At this point, when we were there, the athletes were still able to train there, but we weren't allowed in, and non-essential personnel wasn't allowed in. And so it's, a lot of unknowns, but these athletes still have to train like it's going to happen. Tokyo, really, they'll be in no rush to suspend or postpone or even cancel the games because they've already spent $26 billion to host these games. So they're going to wait till the last possible minute. What we're being told was late June. Late May or sometime early June is when they really have to make that decision.
Yeah, you said May or June. We've heard both. At first, we were hearing statements from the IOC that said they would wait until late May. Last week, we were told maybe they'll wait as late as June. I mean, our flights are booked. Reporters and athletes, our flights to Tokyo are booked at this point, but it's just really a wait and see situation. Jack, I want to go ahead and roll the story so folks watching at home can see what you put together, what athletes are saying and thinking right now, and then we're going to come out of that, and I want to hear kind of your personal thoughts because you've been covering Olympic Games for a long time, and so really want to hear kind of what you're thinking about this. So we're going to go to your story now, just hot off the press, what athletes are thinking right now with the coronavirus concerns.
All right.
In what is typically one of the busiest weeks of the sports year, stadiums all over the world sit empty. Coronavirus has silenced the sports world.
There's just a lot of unknown. It seems like we're in a kind of horror movie a little bit, just because there's just a lot of scare and uncertainty.
Especially for Olympic hopefuls like Bethany Galat. The Tokyo Games are set for July, and so far, organizers are planning to hold them as scheduled.
I mean, if they postponed it, I mean, that'd be disappointing. Or if they cancel it, like that's a heartbreaker.
Athletes all over the world are putting in the work. They train to peak at just the right time for their shot at Olympic glory. But with the Olympic trials and qualifiers on the horizon and postponements likely, knowing when to peak is tricky.
In boxing, in sports, period, it's going to come obstacles in that sport, whether it's personal or open as this virus is. But you just got to go through this obstacle just like every other obstacle.
The Tournament of Americas, the first chance for boxers to qualify for the Tokyo Games, was postponed. Because of coronavirus, boxers have no idea when they'll fight next. For Joe Hicks, keeping the right perspective is key.
The Joe that was going to go into Argentina is going to be even better going into the next tournament.
So Hicks and his teammates will continue to train. But how do you practice social distancing when you compete in a contact sport? On the journey to Tokyo, I'm Jack Doles.
I think we were all thinking what you said right there at the end, especially with boxing and wrestling. I mean, you're right there. It's all about the contact.
Yeah, and they've got to train, and part of that training is contact. The wrestlers can't just roll around on the mats themselves. So they've got to do what they've got to do. So they've got to make sure that who they're training with is healthy, and they've got to make sure that all those mats and everything that they're using, all the facilities in boxing, I'm sure there's going to be extra cleaning done in the places where these athletes train, and as they should be. There are so many challenges now for these. Can the U.S. team bring teams together to train? Is that prudent? Is that safe? So a lot of these guys will probably go off on their own. Joe Hicks lives in Lansing, Michigan now, just got married, has a 4-year-old daughter, and I know he doesn't want to live at the U.S. training facility for 3 months, which was kind of what they were asking some of the athletes to do, because he just can't leave his family behind for 3 months. But he's got to continue to train and get ready. And as he said, you got to take the right perspective. This gives him a chance to train a little bit more so that the Joe in the next time he fights will be a better version of the Joe than the Joe that is right now. So yeah, some of this is perspective. Some of this is just being smart about the way you train. But yeah, in these contact sports, Aaron, contact's part of it. And if you don't train without that contact, I don't know if you're really going to be ready for what comes once the competition begins.
Yeah, Jack, let's switch gears a little bit. Remind us all, for those who don't know, how many Olympics you've covered, what number Tokyo will be, and really what the last few days have been like for you as you, we don't talk about ourselves a lot and kind of turn the focus on us, but you as a sports director, what do you make of all of this? Have you ever seen anything like it or ever imagined we'd be in this position?
The only thing, there's two things I can kind of compare it to is the sports world shut down after 9/11. But, the world kind of turned to sports to help us. It was okay to gather again. The crowds, everybody was looking for something to cheer about and take their minds off what was happening at the time. And sports helped. And I'm sure sports will do that again this time, but people will be a little weary about going back. Is it okay to be in a crowded space again? And at some point, it will be, but we've got to make sure it's a smart thing to do before we do it. And also, when I think back to when AIDS hit, and Magic Johnson was kind of the first one to, when it first came out, there was that fear of the unknown. Nobody knew what created it or started it or where you got it. Did it come when you bumped against somebody or sat on a toilet seat or drank out of the same glass as somebody? There were a lot of question marks and a lot of unknown then. So I compare that unknown to that, and I compare the shutting down of sports to 9/11. Eventually we get through them all because we're smart and we've got a lot of smart people leading the way, and hopefully we find some answers pretty quickly here. But until then, we've got to be smart. Erin, my son Tommy, was playing football in Paris, and they've shut down that league for now, at least through the end of next month. But he just found out yesterday he's got to be basically stuck in his apartment with his wife. They're happy about being together, but they can only leave once a day. And if they're caught on the streets, they've got to prove that they're going to do something like picking up some essential groceries they're kind of all under house arrest there. And you wonder, because it seems like we've been about a week or two behind in those cycles. If we get to that point, it's crazy to see this. I mean, we're living in history right now, stuff that our grandkids will be reading in history books, and we're living through it, like our grandparents and parents did. So these are bizarre times, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, and of course, Tokyo 2020. The story's still being written to see what will happen. And again, Jack, what number? If we're all in Tokyo together, what number Olympics will this be for you?
This will be my 11th.
11th.
So my first.
Incredible. That's why we
first
call Jack the Godfather. Well, Jack, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate your time, and thanks for the story that you brought us on how coronavirus is impacting Olympic hopefuls.
You bet, Erin. Well, good to talk to you guys. We'll do it again, hopefully.
Yeah.
I hope so too. Thank you so much, Jack.
Yeah.
All right. Well, incredible perspective from someone who's been to 11 Olympic Games at this point. That's amazing. And obviously, he's probably seen a lot more than we have regarding the games. And what I'm thinking of is, and people have mentioned this, is that, back in 2016, the Rio Olympics dealt with the Zika virus, and that was a concern as well. But this seems to be a little bit ratcheting up more of the fear and some of the unknown, particularly about that health concern.
Yeah, and that's come up in our conversations. Every single Olympics, there's something, but I don't know if it's never been this big, affecting our everyday lives right here at home. And so there's always been the threat, even in South Korea. We talked about it a little bit last week in our digital show, how there was even, a sense of, is our safety in jeopardy, even going over to South Korea, being right next to North Korea. I mean, there's always something, but this is something like we have never seen. In Jack's story, he talked a little bit about how, athletes training for the Olympics right now, it is all about timing, and they're at their peak performance. So we heard from some athletes in that story, but we also were able to talk to some athletes just in the last 24 hours. So we have Olympic rowers who've been right here in Austin training on Lady Bird Lake since January. Talking a lot about U.S. rowing because their trials were supposed to start today in Sarasota, Florida. This is video right now. That is Coach Matt Madigal. I was shooting this video on Lady Bird Lake. There's Emily Schmieg and Mary Jones Nabel. They are a duo from one's from Boston, one's from the D.C. area, and came here to Austin to train. So at this time, the coronavirus really wasn't a thing here in the United States. I shot this video just a couple of weeks ago and have been following Emily Schmieg on social media, and even throughout just the last few days. She has been posting a little bit about her thoughts and kind of where she's at mentally. And so this is just her latest Instagram post from just a day ago. It says, "When you understand a situation but hate it nonetheless, the health and safety of athletes, coordinators, and volunteers should absolutely be first. The dream does not stop here." So I talked to her via FaceTime just yesterday afternoon, said, "What's running through your mind right now? What do you make of all of this?" And here's a little bit of that conversation. When you heard the news, how do you even put that into words? So what you're feeling, what you're thinking?
It's hard. You don't want to think that 4, 6, 8 years of work is just gone in a flash with something you can't control. But at the same time, I still have hope that there will be some resolution that allows us a chance to qualify for the Olympics.
Yeah, so you heard it right there. People work for years and years to get to this point. She talked about how she and her partner Mary, they work to be at their top game, really starting today for those trials. And so now they've got to, what she said, back down. Number one challenge is finding a training facility. So even the rowing centers right now are shut down. But she said she and Mary are going to stay put in Florida, and there is one rowing center. It's all outdoors that is going to allow them to continue training, but it's even more challenging depending on the sport. We've been in contact with a pole vaulter out of Arkansas. So Sandy Morris, if you happen to catch our Journey to Tokyo story last week, Erin Nolan at Little Rock, Arkansas, brought us a story about a pole vaulter, an Olympic pole vaulter, Sandy Morris, who it was actually a pretty cute story, because on the side she has a ton of reptiles in her house, and so she was holding up snakes and had lizards crawling all over her face. The tone much more serious this week because she was training out of the University of Arkansas, but now she's getting kicked out because not only is it spring break, but the university is shutting down due to COVID-19 concerns. And so she was a little bit flustered over the last couple of days, saying, "I'm trying to scramble to find a facility where I can train. I can't fly there because nobody wants to get on a plane right now." So here's a little bit of our FaceTime conversation just last night.
But most Olympic athletes, we're stuck without places to go right now. So a couple days ago when I heard that, immediately we've started calling around, trying to figure out where to go. My husband, Tyrone, as well, we don't really have a place. So we're working on that right now. So it's kind of crazy to be an Olympic athlete, a professional athlete. Our season, we're hoping, is still going to happen. Tokyo, I have hope. And so you can't stop training. But what are we supposed to do with nowhere to go?
And there you again hear it, Erin. They prepare for months and years for this, and they are still going forward like it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's all I think any of us can do right now. Emily did talk about, it's definitely a health concern. We don't want to, brush that to the side, but hopefully trusting the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, to make the right call when the time is right. And so no one at this point can say that this is not a distraction and we're still focused on training. Yeah, they're trying to still focus on training. They're just trying to find a place to train. Sandy mentioned her husband Tyrone. He is a long jumper, an Olympic long jumper, and he was here in Austin. He's been attending UT Austin getting his MBA, and struggled to find a place to train even before all of this coronavirus stuff came up. I went out and met him at the track just a few weeks ago, and we're planning on running his story on Monday. But they're now together. Thankfully, it's his spring break, so he was there at home with her, but they're trying to find a place that they can both train together, and it's a struggle. She talked about maybe we've got to hop in the car, go somewhere, and while still keeping ourselves healthy.
Yeah, because again, they are anticipating that they're going to be able to go to Tokyo here in just a few months. Because it's still happening at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to kind of revisit, if you're just joining us, I'm Will DuPree. Erin Cargile is joining me here for our Japan 2020 stream. We have planned for months now to have these weekly streams to talk about our Next Star coverage for the Olympics, because there's a pretty large team from our company, from different reporters and sports reporters and things, going from different stations over to Tokyo, and we are still preparing. Erin is going to be one of those team members who is potentially still going at this point, and you got to prepare like you are still going to happen, like the games are going to happen, and that you'll get to cover it.
Yeah, we know you might be sitting at home right now thinking, why are you guys talking about the Olympics? Right. It's so far out, it doesn't matter. We need to be concerned about our own health and our neighbors' health right now. But we plan to launch these shows at the beginning of March. We did the first one last week. We are going to stay committed to that each week and really let the reality dictate what we talk about, what we cover. We also want to hear from you. If you're watching this on Facebook Live right now, I am going to go back and look at the comments and try to answer as many as I can. So if you have questions or concerns, please put those in the comments, and we'll get to them as much as we can. Any stories you'd like to see covered, we're happy to hear it. We're here for you. And so we're all Emily, I don't think we used the soundbite from her, but when we were talking yesterday, she said, I know that I'm using a rowing joke right now, but we're all in this same boat. We're all in this together, really just taking this thing day by day. It's extremely disappointing for she and her rowing partner to now not be participating or competing in their trials this week. And really, I've been saying this all along as we've been covering COVID-19. It's really a domino effect. So everything is impacting the next thing. You've got to have the trials to then qualify for the Olympics. So we don't know when we say this thing is postponed. Really, it's just a wait and see situation, and no one knows when those trials are going to get made up, if they do. When Jack and I were in Colorado last week at the Olympic Training Center, we were talking about the possibility of a postponement. We've heard some of the Olympic officials from Japan saying, we think we don't want to cancel the games or have it without spectators, because that's a big part of it, and they make money off ticket sales, and it's expensive to put the Olympics on. But postponing it, then you get into monsoon season in Japan, then we get into the NFL season, and by that time, we're already starting to prepare for the winter games. And so everything is just, it's like an avalanche at this point. And so there's a lot of questions, but we've been getting new comments from the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, really every few days. I'm going to each different website, USA Rowing, USA Wrestling, USA Track and Field, each of them having their own individual statements about the situation, because all of their trials are hitting at different times. I'm asking the athletes, what are you hearing from your entity, and really they're just not hearing much other than take care of yourself right now and wait and see. We'll give you information as soon as we get it.
And to mention, again, Erin, you were in Colorado Springs just last week on Thursday when you joined us for the first stream for these, and you all were not allowed inside to talk to the athletes. Right.
So the night before, we got an email after weeks and weeks of planning, trying to figure out which athletes we were going to be able to interview and see train and gather video. This is really, when we got to Colorado, everything hit, where we were watching the news on our phones like you guys, everything being postponed, canceled, sports leagues, you name it. And so we were really thinking, what is about to happen? And sure enough, that night before, they said, sorry, access to visitors, or visitors are not going to be able to have access to the athletes. And so we thought we weren't even going to be able to step foot on the property and go past the front gate. But then they said, yes, the visitor center is still open, a sculpture garden outside, because we had some things planned. In addition to interviewing athletes, we were taping a special to bring to you, where we're introducing you and allowing you to get to know a lot of the Olympic hopefuls. And so we moved forward, and we still taped the show, taped some promos. We did a live show from there live as well, really just talking about the coronavirus situation and its impact as far as we knew it at that point on the Olympics and on athletes. So we like the athletes are just full speed ahead until we hear anything different. We're all in this together and trying to navigate it and figure out what to do next. But we have to plan just like everyone else for the Olympics, because if they go on, we've got to be ready, and it takes a lot of logistics and planning on our end. And again, we want to keep you up to speed. Our job, our goal, and our mission is to tell the story of these athletes. And so right now what that looks like is there are so many unknowns. They don't know what the future holds. They don't know if they're going to even be able, some of them, to qualify for the Olympics. So that at this point, if there will be and Olympics.
Yeah, and of course, day by day, more things get canceled. The Olympics remains the biggest outlier among all the sporting events, because we've seen the March Madness tournament canceled at this point, as well as other qualifying tournaments leading up to that. So again, we are trying to track all the latest information. It is coming in, like Erin said, almost like an avalanche. Every moment, information seems to change. So we're still trying to track that. It's a bit overwhelming for us to even be able to share with you all, but we do appreciate you all trusting us to provide that information, because we're trying to get it from the best, most accurate sources and then share it out to you all. I think it should be mentioned too that yesterday the White House finally came out with some recommendations for coronavirus guidelines for the entire country. And the main thing is that they are discouraging people from attending public gatherings that are 10 people or more. So that really affects, as you said, Erin, a lot of the Olympic trials would have attracted many more people than 10, and that is definitely leading to some cancellations, some different thoughts for events such as that.
Yeah, we were talking, I jokingly said, 10 people is basically having your neighbors over to your house for a dinner party.
Right, close family members.
Yeah, and different cities are saying different things. I know here in the city of Austin, they are prohibiting gatherings of more than 250 people, and then all of a sudden we hear 10. And so there's just so many questions about what is the right thing to do right now. And even people concerned about what this lack of contact is going to do, to our mental state of not having, just normal contact with other human beings other than, those outside our family. So a lot of numbers getting thrown around, and certainly at these trials and any gathering, you've got the people putting it on, you've got the fans, you've got the athletes. We're talking hundreds, sometimes thousands, depending on the sport.
Yeah. A big attraction. Well, we want to say thank you all again for watching our stream here for Japan 2020. Once again, we hope you understand why we're bringing this to you. There are lots of things happening with COVID-19, and we want to be able to touch on all of that, but also prepare you for the potential that the Olympics will still happen, because at this moment, they're still supposed to go in July in Tokyo, and we're still tracking that and have a team that will be potentially going to Japan, as Erin will be a part of it too.
Yep, and also I want to mention we plan on doing this every Tuesday.
Yeah.
Every Tuesday, as Jack Doles had mentioned, he and another team member of ours, Andrew Martin, were supposed to be in Los Angeles this week, where the media summit was supposed to happen. Hundreds and hundreds of athletes there to talk to the media, to help share their story. We were, counting on a lot of content to bring you, and of course that canceled at this point and has not been, rescheduled, because everything is so up in the air. But we will be here hopefully every Tuesday, bringing you whatever the reality is with the situation.
All right. Well, Erin, thank you so much for being here, providing such great insight. And we also want to thank Jack Doles, because that was a great voice to bring into this conversation as we keep tracking the impact of COVID-19 here in the U.S. and across the globe. So, Erin, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Will.
All right, and thank you all for watching, too. We hope that was informative for you all. We're going to try to keep you all informed just as much as we can, because that's our goal, is to provide the most factual, accurate information at all times, even when there is information changing literally moment to moment. So we do appreciate that. Once again, thank you all for joining us here on Japan 2020. We will join you back here Tuesday. In the meantime, have a great one.